Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. I'm your co-host for today, Mike Bailey, along with Ellen DePlacido. Good morning, Ellen.
Good morning, Mike.
How are you today?
Good,
Good,
good.
good, good. Hey, we've had some up and down weather lately, haven't we, in regards
Oh,
to
yes,
gardening? This has
yes,
been a challenge for all of us, but that's
right.
typical early season gardening. But
Mm-hmm.
today, we're going to continue on our investigation of this process about insects in the vegetable garden and
Okay.
how you go about controlling them. And Ellen and I talked about this whole thing, and we decided to approach it in this particular manner. We're going to divide the typical vegetables that you might grow in your vegetable garden into three categories. One first category being that you probably don't need a whole lot of attention to these particular vegetables because they're relatively pest free. Then there's another middle group that, yeah, on occasions, yeah, you got to be careful when you got to watch them. And then there's a
Mm-hmm.
final group that's, you can pretty much guarantee that you're probably going to have problems with this particular group. So we'll divide that up, and we're going to tell you which vegetables that we think fit into these categories. And remember, this is kind
Mm-hmm.
of arbitrary on our part. These are based upon our experiences.
Okay.
Then we're going to talk about the insects that might, be a problem for those particular vegetables in that category. And then we're going to talk to you about how to address those insects based upon those 8 different substances that we suggest that you might have on the shelf, okay, to deal with these things. And before Ellen gets started, I want to list those um, 8 substances again. And again, this is our opinion, not any official opinion. We've tried to go through a lot of literature, especially a wonderful article from Purdue University about how to, control the insects in your vegetable garden. And we've tried to narrow it down into those types of materials that are really pretty benign, okay, not very harmful to, you or the environment, etc., but are effective when it comes to insect control. So let's list those again. Insecticidal soap,
Mm-hmm.
horticultural oil, BT or Bacillus thuringiensis, okay, and different varieties of that. Then there's something that's similar to that, which is called spinosad. And then there's neem, and then there's iron phosphate, and pyrethroms, and carbaryl, or
Mm-hmm.
7. And it's
Mm-hmm.
that 7 that is really probably the most, well, that's a synthetic material. And it's probably the most powerful substance that you're going to use. So, Ellen, how about we go
Okay.
ahead and get started with this, with you talking about some of the vegetables that fit into the different categories, please.
Okay. As you mentioned, Mike, there are three different categories that we kind of put these vegetables into. And the first one is vegetables that usually aren't impacted by insects that the vegetable gardener would probably have in his garden. And the first one being garlic, and then onions, beets, carrots, and radishes. And if you notice, those are basically root crops, okay? But then there are also some lettuce, chard, peas, okra, butternut squash, and kale. And some of those are common greens that we plant in a vegetable garden. And so when you take a look at those, they're usually not impacted by insects. But then we have some vegetables that do need some monitoring, but they're not really the ones that are in the biggest danger of being infected by insects. And those are your tomatoes, peppers, beans, eggplant, asparagus, spinach, collard greens, watermelon, and corn. And if you notice, a lot of those are your leafy green vegetables or your sun loving vegetables. So, and we plant those in our gardens. I think most everybody does. So, Mike, you want to mention the ones that probably are the most likely to be infected by insects?
Yeah, those are, you know,
Yeah,
those are
really tough.
yeah, yeah, that broccoli and that
Hmm.
cabbage and that cauliflower, that brassica family of
Hmm.
plants. And then you have your cucumbers, which can be very, very difficult, and your potatoes and your zucchini, summer squash, winter squash, pumpkins and cantaloupes, some viney type of material towards the end there.
Hmm.
These are, a challenge. Okay, but I think the important thing to remember here is that, even in this last category, you don't have to make this difficult. Once you get some basic principles, you know, fixed in your mind, okay, you can approach this thing relatively easily and deal with these and have a very productive garden, even for these difficult plants. And that's kind of what you want to do without using a lot of harmful substances.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to know, Ellen, that there are some plants that don't need a lot of attention.
Right,
Okay, in that
right.
first category that aren't necessarily bothered by a lot of insects. And so that's good. And then those vegetables, okay, that need some kind of monitoring. Yes, uh,
Mm-hmm.
they're there. We need to pay attention. Now, and then of course that last category. But here we're talking. We got to remember, we're only talking about insects.
Right.
We're not talking about diseases. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
diseases comes at some future discussions. Okay, in another month or so, etc. So, but we want to focus right now on the insects. So, Ellen, I think we've kind of used our time for today, and next time
Okay.
around, what we're going to do is we're going to take at least in this next session, these first two categories, and talk about the insects that might be a problem and how to address them with some of these 8 different things that we've talked about. So thank you for listening, and I hope you're with us next time. Thank you. Now, bye bye.
Bye.